Our top story is ricocheting across the country, from Wall Street to Main Street. People who follow the markets, people affected by the markets, people who have money in their retirement program, and a heck of a lot of employees wondering if a day this bad, what some are calling a Trump slump, means we are in for a rocky ride. The Dow plunged almost 900 points. The Nasdaq had its worst day in over 2 years.
The markets are selling off to a point where we're starting to see some real breakage here.
Bell's going to ring in just a moment now, and it's going to ring out a lot of red.
Here come the bells. Oh, boy, what a session. We are actually closing off the session lows, but a big and ugly day.
That bell marks the end of regulation, mercifully maybe. Stocks closing off the lows, but it was another big sell-off to start the week, especially for big tech, with the Nasdaq tanking 4%, dragged down by Tesla, Palantir, Apple, and Nvidia.
A total complete washout. Very, very few companies that managed to be in the green today.
And President Trump, who has long cited his perceived or claimed business record, sometimes in a boardroom that was actually a television set, sometimes in other actual real-world business deals, branding and casinos, he has long cited that as his differentiator across a lot of other candidates and leaders. And we have seen evidence that at times the voters have bought that, the idea that his background in business or the television business would somehow make him a great leader for the economy. That was tested in the first term, where the pandemic and other incidents overtook the entire economy. Trump certainly didn't have a magic way to reverse that then. Maybe no president could have. But now we are seeing a direct response to his leadership, the way he is running the government, the reports of these chaotic cabinet meetings, the tariffs that are announced, withdrawn, repackaged. And during an interview on Fox with Maria Bartiromo, who is a well-known reporter, has tracked a lot of business issues over the course of her career, she asked some straightforward questions and got some really striking answers, including the sitting president saying he couldn't really rule out the possibility of a recession stoked by his Trump tariffs and his Trump-Musk government cuts.
Are you expecting a recession this year?
I hate to predict things like that. There is a period of transition because what we're doing is very big. We're bringing wealth back to America. That's a big thing. And there are always periods of, it takes a little time. It takes a little time. But I think it should be great for us. I mean, I think it should be great.
Not exactly a clear answer, certainly not the kind of business acumen, economic leadership that has a message that might help stabilize the markets. And anyone who's followed the markets knows they do have a kind of a logic all their own. They're not going to be sweet-talked into something by a president, any president who wants things to just be better. But they might have taken a better message that was sturdy or clear about what the United States was going to do, or taking things off the table, or clarifying why he started last week, Monday, with tariffs, some of which were walked back by the end of the week. That message didn't come across. And instead, Donald Trump did something that we've seen before, whether you're more interested in politics, law, news, or the markets. He did the old two-step that everyone has seen, where very blatantly he tries to just directly retract, paper over, reverse what he said in the past. He's long claimed the markets are the thing to watch. Now, here's his answer.
You said, look, we're going to have a disruption, but we're okay with that. Is that what you meant? The stock market going down was the disruption? What other disruption were you alluding to?
Look, what I have to do is build a strong country. You can't really watch the stock market.
Don't watch the stock market unless you're crowing about how initially after the election, and we covered this at the time, there was a spike after Trump won in November. There were stocks and companies that were seen as having a better footing in the expected sort of deregulatory environment of a Republican administration. And here's how Trump sounded then.
What do you have to say to the American investor in this country?
Well, I think you're going to see some very good days ahead.
We used to speak together about the idea that the averages mattered and were a good barometer of your performance. Is that still the case? Can we go beyond Dow Jones, maybe to NASDAQ?
Well, I think I've always said, to me, stock market is all of it, all of it together. It's very important.
Very important, and here is that very important trajectory. It is down. There was the boost I mentioned. There was a kind of an earlier excitement in the November period, but the chart you see here is the actual governing period. So there it opens at Jan 20, goes up for a bit, what some call the honeymoon period. Then you actually have these cuts, the style of leadership, the governing clashes I mentioned, and of course, the tariff confusion, and the choppy trajectory is down, down, down. This is not riggable. This is not a fixable number. This is the actual collective reaction of thousands and thousands of investors looking at the broad markets and a whole range of companies. And yet we raised this with a Trump aide who'd worked on more than one campaign, including 2024, on Friday. And here's what we heard.
The goal ultimately is a humming economy, and you have to be patient. We saw it in the first term. We know what the formula looks like, contrary to what the media wants to say.
It's not the media, it's the markets, right? I mean, I just went through a bunch of market data. It's not media.
Well, I think you're foolish to think that the media doesn't play a role in the markets. We see that all the time.
Now, maybe that's the best counter-argument one could come up with, but as I said there, and it bears a little more unpacking, when hundreds of companies' floating stock prices are reacting to tangible governing events like these cuts and these tariffs and the promised trade war and the general bellicose stance towards certain other countries, disrupting the European alliance on a foreign policy level with Ukraine, also has geopolitical and geofinancial implications. All of this together, we get a response from the markets, not the media. As I even said with all humility in that interview at another point, I said, look, whatever you say about me and the other anchors, we don't speak and just move markets all day, right? The president's actions can do that, not the media. Private businesses now are being pretty clear that the overall way that the Musk cuts are going could hurt business. And remember, they don't view that as an ideological or political statement, and many of those companies are in areas like finance or oil where they would prefer a little less federal government. They're certainly open to cuts. But even the people open to cuts are saying, not this way, not this indiscriminate, not this incompetent at times, and it's just going to hurt business. They are calling out a mounting type of government-created chaos that will have, quote, an adverse effect or impact on their businesses, actions by Musk that adversely affect the business, and one here you see there warns a period of great uncertainty with headwinds. The stock market has investors. The political market, if you want to think about it that way, our country has citizens. And I don't mean to sound quaint when I say the citizens can, should, and do still matter. So we're seeing those town halls. Some initially were in the Republican areas where people were upset. Now Democrats are making sure to hold gatherings, events, rallies, and town halls, taking the temperature on how people think these first 7 weeks and this market slump is going under the Trump agenda.
Did you vote to raise the price of groceries? No!
We've introduced a bill called the Eliminate Looting of Our Nation by Mitigating Unethical State Kleptocracy, which, if you put all the letters together, it's called the Elon Musk Act.
Did you vote to rip health care coverage from millions of people?
No! What I see happening all over America is people, not just Democrats, saying we fought for too long and too many people died for democracy. We're not going to oligarchy.
Like bullies everywhere, Donald and Elon are afraid of people who won't bend the knee. They are afraid of pushback, and we are here to push back.
Pushback, backlash, anger, and a kind of eyes wide open absorption of what this governing agenda actually does to your life, to your pocketbook, to your stock market, to your library down the street, to the Veterans Health Center, which you might not want to think about that much. You'd hope for all the talk about veterans and patriotism in this country, including on the Republican Party's right flank, that it wouldn't even have to be debatable whether or not veterans assured health care and support through the VA would have that up and down. So maybe people weren't thinking about that across the election year, but now they're seeing it. And for people who genuinely care about that kind of thing, and I don't care your politics, but if you care about that kind of thing because it doesn't sound like a good idea or what they ran on, all of that is now in the water of this backlash. And if you remember, we heard a lot, especially right after Donald Trump won the election, about messaging, about who had better lines, quips, memes, who was snappier on the podcasts. And that's a big part of campaigning. If you watch The Beat, you hear us talk about our YouTube. We had on a lot of different individuals who aren't in the normal mainstream. We love what's going on with digital and podcasts. That's all part of this. And if one party missed some of that on the campaign side, well, then that's politics. You got to deal with it. But what I've told you and what we're seeing to start this week with this market slump is the campaign time is over. Right now, it doesn't seem like the public is assessing who was better on a podcast, who had a better slogan or a quip. They're assessing the actual governing results of this agenda in this early, nascent, and harrowing period. And a lot of people are saying, whatever they thought of the message last year, they're saying no to the results right now.
Over the weekend, Arizona U.S. Senator Mark Kelly went to Ukraine, where he met with Ukrainian officials and soldiers and ordinary people living with the fallout from Russia's 3-year invasion of that country. After he got home, Senator Kelly posted about his trip on Elon Musk's social media platform, Twitter. He said in part, quote, "Just left Ukraine. What I saw proved to me that we can't give up on the Ukrainian people. Everyone wants this war to end, but any agreement has to protect Ukraine's security and can't be a giveaway to Putin. Putin is a war criminal who targets hospitals routinely. I visited one in Kyiv. Injured soldiers told me how they wanted to get back to the fight. Nurses there shared their stories of the invasion with me through tears." He said, "I met with Ukrainian pilots flying challenging combat missions against the Russians who are protected by a considerable electronic warfare and surface-to-air missile system defense. When Trump cut off these Ukrainian pilots from U.S. intelligence that they needed to plan their missions, he blinded them to the threat and he put them and their aircraft at risk. But worse than that, it helps the Russians advance further into Ukrainian territory to murder more Ukrainians. President Trump says the Russians are, quote, hitting them hard in a tone of voice that implies approval. It is sickening to see from an American president. Quote, hitting them hard means more dead Ukrainian kids. Senator Kelly says, quote, "I visited the Wall of Remembrance to pay tribute to Ukraine's dead soldiers. I'm bringing back what I saw and learned from Ukrainian leaders, service members, and the Ukrainian people to show the direct impact our support is having on the ground." He says the world will become a very cold and lonely place if we continue this ridiculous, screw you, go it alone foreign policy. It is dumb, and it will not age well, and it puts you and your kids and your grandkids at risk. After Senator Kelly posted that online, he got a response from President Donald Trump's top campaign donor. Elon Musk said in response to the combat veteran, Navy commander, and U.S. astronaut, quote, "You are a traitor." Senator Kelly then responded by saying, "Traitor? Elon, if you don't understand that defending freedom is a basic tenet of what makes America great and keeps us safe, maybe you should leave it to those of us who do." Joining us now is Arizona U.S. Senator Mark Kelly. Senator, I really appreciate you joining us this evening. I know you've had a lot of travel time recently.
Do you care lefty or righty?
It doesn't matter.
I got you?
It was, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I can hear you now, too. Go ahead, sir. I can hear you now.
All right. Yeah, sorry about that. I thank you for having me on the show. It's a long trip to get there. It's exhausting. It's really important to do it, especially now. I mean, I can't believe what's going on. It seems like our country, well, at least the Oval Office, has switched sides in this conflict. And to meet with the Ukrainian people, you showed the two nurses on the screen there. Tatiana and Irina were their names, and their story is just heartbreaking. It is so sad. You didn't share the part, I think. I think it's important to hear what they experienced. They watched children that they knew being raped by Russian soldiers in front of their parents, and then those kids murdered by those Russian soldiers in front of their parents. It was heartbreaking. It is horrendous. It'll never be forgiven. Those soldiers were sent there by Vladimir Putin to destroy this country, Putin is an existential threat to Ukraine, to Europe, ultimately to us. Those women come to work every single day and try to take care of these veterans. It was one of the saddest things I've seen since I've been in this job. And just to think right now where we are, they're going into this negotiation in Saudi Arabia. I hope it goes well. Nobody wants this to end, as much as the Ukrainian people. But Rachel, this has to end in a way where Ukraine has dignity and has their territory back, in a way where they're stronger. And what Donald Trump has done, I mean, he has really set up these negotiations in a way that not only make us look weak, but they put Ukraine in a really horrible position.
In terms of these negotiations, such as they are, that are happening, in terms of the posture of the U.S. towards this conflict, it appears to me from the outside, just as a citizen looking at this, that nothing has been asked of Russia, and that, to the contrary, everything that Russia might conceivably have asked of the United States, short of U.S. troops bombing Ukraine itself, has been offered to Russia without concession by this president. I don't know why Marco Rubio personally feels like the right vessel for that, given his previous clear-eyed warnings about and criticism about Vladimir Putin. Do you feel like there's anything the United States could do, if it had its wits about it, to try to change some of the way that Trump is interacting already with Russia and Ukraine in a way to make it more likely that Ukraine loses this war?
Well, I can tell you what we shouldn't have done. Right at the beginning here of this negotiation, Donald Trump decides to give up Ukrainian territory, say that's not an option, they're not going to get everything back, and to say they'll never be a member of NATO. That's not the way you go into a negotiation. And Secretary Rubio said something similar here on his way to Saudi Arabia. You always want to negotiate from a position of strength. They're not doing that. You're right, they have not asked anything of the Russians. And Putin is a criminal. He respects, if anything, he respects strength. But keep in mind, Rachel, he wants to undermine Western civilization. He wants to undermine our country, our democracy. He wants to take back territory. He's talked about that. He wants Ukraine back. Then he's going to go to the Baltics. He's going to go to Poland. And then we have to come to their defense. What I'm trying to do here is making the American people aware that what this administration is doing right now, they are making serious mistakes. We've got to go into a negotiation strong. Donald Trump thinks, he looks, strong, but he's really being a bully. And he's, at least for the Russians, he's making us look weak.
Senator, I have to ask you, and I apologize in advance for doing this, but I have to ask you if you have any response tonight to what the president's top campaign donor, Mr. Musk, said about you, bluntly calling you a traitor in response to you writing about your trip to Ukraine.
Well, Rachel, when I was 22 years old, before getting sworn into the Navy, or as I was getting sworn in to the United States Navy, I swore an oath to our Constitution to protect and defend the Constitution. I have lived that oath my entire life. I flew in combat in the first Gulf War. I served in the United States Navy for 25 years. I spent 15 years at NASA risking my life flying the space shuttle. And the only oath I can think of that maybe Elon has sworn is an oath to his own checking account, to his pocketbook, an oath maybe to ruining the lives of veterans. I had veterans in my office last week who, after really good performance reports, found out that Elon Musk fired them for poor performance. He has ruined these people's lives. They were serving our country again in very valuable roles, and they did not deserve to get fired by an email from an unelected billionaire. So I think Elon needs to, go back to making rockets. That's what he should focus on. He shouldn't be focused on this slash and burn of the federal government. And by the way, Rachel, he's doing it for one reason. He's doing this so they create a little space so the big giant tax cuts that they're going to give for millionaires and billionaires do not look as bad, does not add as much to the debt and deficit. And the way he's going to do it is he's firing people. And then on top of that, he's going to cut health care for kids that a third of kids get their health care, or a third of people that get their health care from Medicaid are children, and he's going to cut health care for seniors, all to give this big tax cut. So I would prefer if Elon went back to his old job, at SpaceX and Tesla.
Well, it seems like certainly Starlink or SpaceX could use some executive help at this point. Maybe some more time might be available. Senator Mark Kelly, I really appreciate you taking time tonight. Thank you for talking to us tonight, sir.
Thank you, Rachel.
Let's talk more about all this with MSNBC political analyst and former Democratic Congresswoman from Maryland, Donna Edwards, and former New Hampshire Republican Party Chair Jennifer Horn. Jennifer, so we just heard the president not ruling out a recession. The markets really have been down more than they've been up lately. And already some Trump voters are starting to sour on his actions. One fired civil servant saying she's no longer a Trump supporter, saying of the cuts, as much as I think that President Trump is doing wonderful things for the country in some regards, I don't understand this at all. What kind of political peril do you see for the president and Republicans if the economy tanks?
Well, obviously significant, and that quote you just gave from that federal worker kind of defines how the voter sentiment is going to be filtered through all of this. Now that it's hitting her, now that she's feeling the consequences of, an irresponsible president, now she's worried. Now she has concerns. And we're going to see this across the country. I look at this as we're just starting to see the real life consequences of what happens in an oligarchy. Trump's billionaires are pushing and executing policy that they will never feel the pain from. Jeff Bezos will never feel the impact of eliminating access to the United States Postal Service in rural America. Elon Musk will never care that the cost of a new car is going to go up $13,000 when we get into these trade wars with Canada. The cost of the immediate impact on the cost of groceries, on produce for families across America, if Trump follows through on these tariffs with Mexico. That's such a great quote that you just used, because what's happening is that people are finally starting very slowly to feel what the immediate real life impact is going to be on them as individual citizens and families under this presidency.
Even as the president hit pause on these Canada and Mexico tariffs, Congresswoman, he teased that he would hit them with more, and he indicated the level may not even be set yet, that they could go up. Clearly, President Trump believes keeping everyone on their toes is a good thing. How do you see it? Is America winning with this strategy?
Well, I don't think America's winning. More particularly, Americans are not winning with this strategy. It's interesting because when we've seen the last couple of weeks of the downslide in the market, when ordinary Americans are starting to take a look at their retirement accounts, their 401k plans, they've also seen that same downslide. And to the extent that continues, individual Americans are going to really feel this when it comes to the trade wars. When you hear, major retailers saying, well, we don't have a choice, we're going to pass that along to consumers, that means every time you go into a store, you're going to be paying more for a product than you did a year ago or a month ago. And so I think as these things start to ripple out through the economy, you're going to see more of those stories, not just federal workers, but what about the places that lose federal workers and it impacts the receipts at the local diner and the dry cleaners? These are things that really begin to impact small businesses on down the line. So I think we've only just begun here. And the president is creating chaos and instability and insecurity. And that, of course, is going to play out in terms of the way people see on personal economy.
In that same Fox interview, President Trump brushed off concerns about that instability and these flip-flops on tariffs. Watch.
Can you give us a sense of whether or not we are going to get clarity for the business community?
Well, I think so. But, the tariffs could go up as time goes by, and they may go up. And, I don't know if it's predictability. I think
so that's not clarity.
No, I think that they say that. It sounds good to say.
Will we have clarity?
You'll have a lot, but we may go up with some tariffs. It depends. We may go up. I don't think we'll go down, but we may go up. But they have plenty of clarity. They just use that. That's like almost a soundbite.
Jennifer, so much for clarity. They may go up, they may go down. You used to run a state GOP. What's your read on the muddled message for someone framing himself as pro-business?
Well, there's nothing pro-business about what Donald Trump is executing here as far as an economic plan goes. I mean, look at the cost of energy coming in from Canada for 3 border states is going to rise dramatically, 25%, they're saying, today. You know, industries and businesses in Michigan and Minnesota and New York, you know, critical economic hubs, you know, in those parts of the country. So there's no clarity here. There's nothing that is pro-business here. And the president's lack of clarity in his message contributes to not just the insecurity that people feel, but the actual disruption of the markets, of the economy.
Congresswoman, Canada is already fighting back. Today, Ontario will start levying a 25% surcharge on electricity sent to New York, Minnesota, as well as Michigan. If people in those states see their energy bills go up, how do Democrats lay this on Republicans without looking like they're cheerleading a bad economic outcome for their constituents?
Well, I think Democrats have to really make clear where the blame is passed. We can't assume that customers, consumers in those 3 border states are going to realize where the problem is. And so Democrats have to tell a very clear story and place the blame. I think it's appropriate in this circumstance to blame Donald Trump and his tariffs directly when your electric bill goes up next month. And when, you know, business costs go up next month. So this is a reality. And I think Democrats would be smart to say it early, often, all the time about who's to blame for this.
Former Congresswoman Donna Edwards and Jennifer Horn, thank you both. I appreciate the conversation, ladies.
You giving up your other stuff? I mean, how are you running your other businesses?
With great difficulty. Yeah. The work is making you sigh. Clearly, Elon Musk has had a rough few days. Tesla dealerships have become the target of protests across the country, and its stock price has taken a big nosedive. Just today, Tesla's stock price dropped by 15%. There are going to be some hangry shareholders there. That made it the worst day for the company in almost 5 years. Twitter also had a bad day, and that's saying something, folks, with massive outages that Musk blamed on a cyber attack that originated from Ukraine. Yes, sure. And increasingly, Americans are just fed up with this guy. Polls consistently show Musk's approval rating underwater. And apparently, even some in Trump's White House are fed up, too. In a meeting last week, Trump cabinet officials reportedly clashed with Musk over his approach in overhauling the federal government. And with all of this outrage surrounding Elon Musk coming from everywhere all at once, Democrats see an opportunity here. More and more, they're putting him in front and center in their messaging and, of course, in attack ads across the country.
Who's going to pay the price? Us. Our jobs lost. Our grocery prices up. Our housing unaffordable. Our benefits cut. Also, billionaires can reap the benefits.
Elon Musk is out of control. And now the power-hungry billionaire is unloading millions to buy the Wisconsin Supreme Court. He knows MAGA politician Brad Schimmel is for sale.
Faz, Simone, and Brendan are back with me at the table. So, Faz, here's the deal. I get it. I mean, in some sense, he's an easy target. Musk is. But I want to go back to where Simone was at the beginning of the last conversation, because we're kind of aligned in that space. I think if Democrats solely focus their ire on Musk, you miss the moment. You miss the mark in the moment. I think there should be a broader approach in your advertising. That's good, but that's not the end game. The end game is Donald Trump.
Yeah, and making Donald Trump own some of these decisions. Right now, of course, Musk is his,
his heat shield in some ways. But it is also true that Elon Musk is spending money in these Wisconsin Supreme Court races. He is the one slashing Social Security offices all over the place. By the way, he stands to make $55 billion from Tesla, a company he's wrecking right now. $55 billion. I mean, before we had CEO pay packages of $100 million, that was obscene. Right. $55 billion. So, he is a huge figure in the Republican orbit right now. We shouldn't underlook that. But you're right that at the end of the day, Donald Trump, the buck stops with him. He's the one who's making these decisions. He's empowering him. And you sense now, increasingly in the press, there's more of a rift. Suggestions of Marco Rubio's upset, that Sean Duffy's upset at him. Even Donald Trump might have to, even Steve Bannon, of course, maybe the loudest, angry at him. I don't mind a little bit of the Civil War playing out.
All right. So on that front, Simone,
yes.
Elon was on TV today.
Oh, Lord. I saw it. I'm like, what is he whining about?
It was on Fox Business. So let's have a little listening on what Elon had to say over at Fox Business.
There's a massive amount of fraud of basically people submitting Social Security numbers for Social Security benefits, unemployment, Small Business Administration loans, and medical, where those are fake Social Security numbers, or they've stolen somebody else's Social Security number, and we're trying to put a stop to all of that. And that's the number which is estimated to be on the order of 10% of federal expenditures.
If it was that easy to sell a Social Security number, honey, there would be a black market.
Oh, and there'd be a black, blue, red, white, and blue market on this.
Pookie, Joe, Keisha, and Juan would all be getting rich.
Every last one of them would be rich.
It would be a multicultural grab bag.
I'd have an operation in the back behind me on the set.
No, you wouldn't, because you would be legal, Michael Steele.
But that's the point. How does he know that when Doge has been on the ground doing this for how long? And doing it improperly and incorrectly?
They're not on the ground, Michael. They're at a spreadsheet at a computer.
Yes. This is true. They're at a spreadsheet at a computer.
But also Social Security, Congressional Research Service has told us this for many years. Undocumented people contribute into Social Security and don't receive benefits. In fact, Social Security reports a surplus every year from money coming in from undocumented. There's no waste fraud.
People who have died, who have Social Security, like my father, who died in 2017, my mother gets his benefits because she is his beneficiary on the paperwork. But when you have people who don't understand how the United States government works because they're freshly here and not keyed into what's going on inside the government, Elon Musk out of South Africa.
I say sincerely, I admire Elon Musk's ambition. But he is a person who just seemingly woke up one day and said he's going to do politics.
Yes.
And
he needs an advisor. He can stand
like,
to make a lot of money.
He acts like he's the first person who realized that there's fraud or waste in government. There are Inspector General reports and GAO reports this high that have outlined these things for years. And he's like, did you know this? Yes, all of us were aware of that. But there isn't like a button you press and it goes away. And so that's let's take this a little more seriously. Let's be a little more thoughtful about what we're doing. And so, on the substance, but then also on the politics, he's causing a huge problem for his boss.
So on that point, is there a point where he becomes more toxic than Donald Trump can stand?
Certainly. And I think Donald Trump actually has a pretty good political radar. Like, if he realizes that I'm losing more than I'm gaining from here, I think he'll cut him loose really quickly. I mean, he can't entirely cut him loose because he does depend on his money a lot for political reasons. But Musk is going through this in this like maximum pain, minimal gains, firing people, creating all this chaos. And the budget savings he's actually talking about this is tiny. He's not balancing the budget.
They haven't saved any money
They haven't saved any money.
Can I just make one point, because I know you're about to go. So the point that you started with about why all the focus on Elon Musk.
Right.
And we always talk about kind of some of these similarities between what's happening now and Russia in 2000 when Putin first came to power. We don't know any of the oligarchs' names in Russia, but we know Putin. Right? And so the problem, I think, with continuing to elevate Elon Musk so much in the messaging is that you miss the forest for one tree. Elon Musk is not the goal. Republicans writ large, I don't understand why in the messaging, Democrats are not making Mike Johnson and Republicans in the House and Senate look like fools who are being pushed around by an unelected billionaire that woke up one day and just decided to do politics.
So
that's some of the stuff.
So back to you on the messaging piece and to what Brendan was saying, there are vulnerabilities there. Yes. How do you take advantage of them?
Let me remind everyone of Donald Trump, and I'm obviously not his biggest fans here. I watched him hundreds of events this cycle. And I promise you, as someone who watched a lot of those, He never talked about, put me in office, and I'm going to slash the hell out of this federal government. I am going to cut Medicaid to the bone. Put me in office, and it's going down. I'm bringing my arsonists. We're shutting down this federal government. Never made those claims. Never argued for them. Now, I mean, a lot of people feel hoodwinked and bamboozled. He, in fact, when Project 2025 laid this out in a blueprint, what did he do? We all remember. He said, not mine. Right. That is not my plan, and that's not my proposal. Well, it was a lie. It was a
okay, so we know that. We know that. So then what is the response to that?
They need to put the ads out, and I think Democrats have to be disciplined in their messaging. I will say they have been dogged on the Social Security front and more recently the Medicaid front. They've been very clear about that. I don't think voters wonder where they stand on that. I do think highlighting the stories of real people that are affected, that's going to make a difference and remind people, look, Social Security has never missed a payment in 80 years. And because of what this administration is doing, next month people might not get their checks.
All right. I got so much more that we could hit on this one. So much more.
We are halfway through Donald Trump's first 100 days back in office, and Democrats, some believe, are struggling to find an effective way to publicly oppose the president's agenda. Recently, longtime Democratic strategist James Carville had an unusual suggestion for them. Roll over and play dead. James Carville joins us now. He, of course, helped elect former President Bill Clinton in the early 90s, and Mark McKinnon is here. He is a former advisor to both George W. Bush and John McCain. All right, James. You wrote that a few weeks ago, so let's talk about what has happened since then. The tariffs went into effect. Markets have been annihilated. President Zelensky was kicked out of the Oval Office, and DOJ has been taking an absolute sledgehammer to the federal government. Do you still believe that Democrats should play dead?
Well, first of all, let me say I'm delighted to be on here with my dear friend Mark McKinnon. We go back 41 years. I was his boss in Texas Senate raid back in 1984. So anytime I get a chance to appear with one of my pupils, I'm always glad. The second, to your question. So today, the NASDAQ dropped 4%. Elon Musk went on Larry Kudlow's show and said we ought to either cut or eliminate Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. How do you get in front of that? All right? There's no way to do that. So my point is, do you want to go there and bang canes at the State of the Union, or flash auction signs? Or do you want to have a dignified and determined response to the absolute threat this poses to the United States? And everybody like, ooh, let's charge. Let's do something. Oh, like a charge of the Light Brigade. No. Treat this like the moment it is. The whole experiment of the United States is at risk. Let's act like it. Let's don't do stunts and candlelight vigils and all the other crazy, goofy stuff they do. This is where we are. Let's rise to the moment.
So what does that look like, Mark? Should they let a government shutdown happen this Friday?
Well, listen, first of all, it was exactly 40 years ago that I did my first campaign with James Carville. I learned most of what I know about politics from James. He was the smartest strategist working then, and he still is. By the way, we won an upset primary then, and we had to move James out of the building because he was scaring the interns so badly. We had to get him a separate office. James is right. I mean, the problem is if you bark every time Trump bites, all you're doing is making noise and howling at the moon. You know, if you react to everything, you're focused on nothing. And I think, again, let's go back to James Carville's famous mantra, it's the economy, stupid. This thing is cratering us on its own. There's nothing that James or I can do to speed it up. It's happening. I thought there might be town halls in Republican districts in the North a year from now. They're in red, the reddest states in Georgia, places in Georgia right now, howling at Republican congressmen about what's happening. So we just need to sit back and get focused. But I do think the response should be determined, as James says, but super focused and make it about the economy because that affects all voters, including MAGA voters.
But here's one of the issues, James. The American people are not getting accurate information. There is a misinformation cannon shooting through televisions, through social media all day, every day. Last night, I was in an Uber in Northwest North Carolina, right, in Asheville, where they had a hurricane 6 months ago. And my Uber driver said to me, we haven't gotten any financial support, not from Joe Biden, but now that Donald Trump is in office, all that money for us that's been tied up in cities because of DEI. We're finally going to get that money. And I thought if it wasn't 3 a.m. and I needed to get into my hotel, I would have sat there and had an argument with that man. But should people stop? Should Democrats stand up? Should they be going on Fox News and telling the American people the truth? Because scores of people down where you live in Louisiana, they're being fed rhetoric every day that just ain't the truth.
Well, first of all, that guy is what we call in Louisiana a gone pecan. You're not getting him. He's done. He's a gone pecan, okay? And just remember Carville's first commandment of politics, thou shalt not make an ass out of thyself. Okay, so we gotta be. In fact, I can't argue with that guy. What happened in Western Gulf about a lot of wonderful people out in that part of the country, but some people make a life choice to be stupid. All right, the guy's probably not, and I know plenty of people like that. They just choose to be stupid. Well, I can't do anything about that. But there are people that we can get. In more than one, you're watching this organic movement come up in these town halls around the country. You're watching the chair of the Virginia State Party told me they're getting more people coming into headquarters in these counties, all even outside of Northern Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley and South Side, and all the places around the Commonwealth. They're coming in, and there's a movement out there. We have to trust it. Yeah, I know we had a terrible election, but we have to manage this properly. The country is counting on us, and we just have to be smart, effective, and patient. And that's our big hope. And I think our leadership is just going to have to rise to the occasion.
Let's talk about the leaders or the leading voices. Senator Bernie Sanders is on the road. He's holding rallies as part of his Stop the Oligarchy tour. Thousands of people are attending. Mark, do you believe Bernie Sanders is the right voice, is the right messenger? I mean, he's an OG when it comes to rallying Democratic troops, but he's also an OG.
He is an OG, but he's the reason he's an OG is because he has a message that resonates with an important part of the Democratic base, and he's the most authentic voice out there. Even though he's older than James and I are, which is saying something. But listen, I think there are people following in his footsteps, and it's important for those voices to be heard. And great that Bernie Sanders is out ringing that bell. There's a lot of heat out there, and I think that he's helping kind of stir the pot. But again, per James' point, I think that broadly speaking, let Sanders do his thing, let AOC fire up the base. That's great. Keep them engaged. But, the gone pecans are going to go to the grocery store, and the pecans are going to be pricier. They're going to have to pay more for those pecans and for eggs. So that's the point at which we can say, okay, march, march forward. We got them. They're on their heels.
Right.
Well, there was an unlikely.
Stephanie,
yes.
You have to seize opportunities that come your way. Right. The most asinine thing I've heard anybody say in a long time is the Secretary of Agriculture of the United States of America, the Secretary of Agriculture of these United States of America, was asked about high egg prices, and she said maybe people need to raise their own chickens. Okay, that's not once in a century stuff. That's Marie Antoinette clueless. All right? Raise your own chickens. And we just got to let these people continue to talk. They are fools, and don't get in a way of letting them make fools of themselves. And I really mean that. And every day you come up with another situation like this, where Mark Kelly, who's one of the most patriotic people, where Elon Musk says Mark Kelly is a traitor. What's wrong with this picture? This guy was like, I don't know how many combat missions in the Navy, was unbelievable. His wife is literally a martyr. And this guy says that Mark Kelly is a traitor? He's one of the most respected people in the United States. We just have to trust that people are going to rebel against that at some point. Going to say, well, maybe I was voting because I didn't want this, but look what you're getting. Look what you're getting. Look what's right in front of your face. a chicken coop. The Enola Gay. So I want to put a chicken coop over the Enola Gay and let that be the symbol of the whole thing.